This is the Future Lab. I'm Lee Schneider. This season, I'm asking my guests about the state today of science fiction and fantasy writing and publishing. I'll interview your favorite authors, editors, publishers, and industry experts about writing and publishing the books you love to read. If you like what you hear, don't forget to give the show some stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Sofía Aguilar. This year, Sofía published Queer Latin Heroes, 25 Changemakers from Latin America and the U.S., with Jessica Kingsley Publishers, as well as her poetry chapbook, Amor, through Bottlecap Press. She co-created the inaugural Hermosa Libros Book Festival and completed her master's in library and information science. Her debut full-length poetry collection streaming service, the series finale, is slated for release in the spring of 2026. She is currently at work on her first novel and fourth poetry chapbook. Please welcome Sofía to the show. Now, you've done indie publishing and more traditional publishing. Do you think writers should move toward indie publishing more and avoid traditional publishing houses? Or would it be better for them to test the boundaries of the traditional publishers?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I feel like, writers all have different goals, and I think those goals and ambitions will impact the way that they view publishing and what publishing they want to pursue. I know for me, and it also depends on genre too. So for me, with poetry, I feel like self-publishing just gives me a lot more autonomy and creativity and independence that I really needed as a young writer. And I still do. I'm self-publishing my next poetry collection in the spring. And so for me, I think it provides me a greater sense of, a greater sense of freedom in a genre that is already so vulnerable. And I think you'll find most poetry collections, if they are published by traditional publishers, it's more by established poets. So you're talking, Eddie Limon, Sandro Cisneros, like these really big powerhouses who very readily and very easily can get contracts for publishing poetry collections. But that comes with time. That's earned. I think when you start out, for me, it was easier to self-publish my own poetry, especially, again, because it's such a vulnerable practice. It's a genre that is asking you to give so much of yourself. And as a young poet, I think it was very scary, the idea of sending my work out into the world like that. And definitely think self-publishing, I think it gets a lot of negative stigma because there's this perception that it's not as good as like traditionally published work. It's not as valuable. But I think now that I've been in the writing community for so long, I think that there's nothing further from the truth. Some of my favorite poetry collections are self-published or, have been released by poets who don't have a lot of capital or, a very, even a very big knowledge of publishing in general. Like one of my friends just published a poetry collection that's like, it's 4 pages. It's literally 2 pieces of paper and she stapled it and she printed it, literally made copies at like Office Depot. And I think, the idea that is somehow less valuable than a poetry collection you find in Barnes and Noble, I think you inherently lose something. I think you close yourself off to different forms and media experiences. Then again, on the other side of it, you have traditional publishing, which I've also done with my children's book. And that taught me, if self-publishing taught me independence and autonomy and self-expression, I think traditional publishing taught me the value of collaborative, teamwork and collaboration and being able to listen to other people's opinions and maybe learn when to advocate for yourself, when to speak up, when to accept that maybe they have a point, and you also get a lot more resources with, your cover art and the revising and the layout. And so it's very different experiences. But again, it depends on what your goals are. It depends on how you want it to look, how you want it to be distributed. If this is something that you want just for like your circle of friends, or is it something you want in a Barnes and Noble? And I think there's no right or wrong answer. I think it just depends on the type of writer you are and the foot you want to place in the world, how you want to present your work and yourself.
If you could just change one or two things about the whole publishing process, what do you think you would change?
I think I would definitely change sometimes the barriers and the gatekeeping that come along with it. So, you think about self-publishing, and like I said, you can, I think it's in many ways accessible because you just need, a printer or you go to the library to print your work. But then again, you also, sometimes it takes money. Like the nicer you want it to look, the more money you need to invest. And obviously that is risky for a lot of people who, writing may not be their day job. We're not all Stephen King, we're not all James Patterson. Like we all have to make living elsewhere. And so I definitely think, and again, with traditional publishing, it's a waiting game. It's sending your work, not knowing if it's gonna be published, being rejected, obviously. Sometimes I think I've talked to editors and publishing, and oftentimes it's in specifically editors of color in the publishing industry. It can be really disheartening to hear that, being of color, they have obviously very unique insight, very valuable insights. But a lot of the times, because publishing is so overwhelmingly white, I think they get a lot of pushback and a lot of, oh, I don't know if that'll sell, or I don't, maybe this is too niche. And so people, I think sometimes you're having to navigate all these different expectations. Um, you have to think of money constantly. It's not only about, is this book good enough? Am I proud of this work? Is this going to sell? And I think sometimes that can be very disheartening and again, very gatekeeping because I think you should publish your work no matter how much money you think it's going to make. You publish it because you think it's good. And I wish the quality of a work was the only defining factor in whether or not it got published and not, well, I think, obviously it's very important what readers think, but it's like it shouldn't, I think, take so much precedence or importance and how work gets published and who gets published, because oftentimes it's the same people over and over again, or it's the same people getting popular. Like, you think of Sally Rooney and
Hmm.
Emily Henry, and it's like they're great writers, but it's like where is that same support and enthusiasm for authors of color? I just don't think you see that, and I think that gatekeeping takes a lot of different forms in a lot of different ways from a lot of different parties in publishing. And yeah, it's discouraging. But I think for me, I just kind of I have to keep pushing. I have to keep moving, and believing in my work and having faith in myself and supporting other writers along the way who I think deserve just as much, if not more, accolades and celebration and opportunities.
Yeah, you've pointed out it's kind of this loop, this self-perpetuating loop that keeps rolling.
Mhm.
But you've done a festival, and I wanted to ask about that, the Hermosa Libros Festival.
Mhm.
How did that help? Why did you do that?
Mhm.
What are you accomplishing there?
Yeah, so that was an idea that my friend Celeste Alyssa Gomez and I had earlier this year. And basically, fun fact, she actually used to work for Scholastic.
Hmm.
And so she would, she often would go to schools in person and help out with the book fairs. And there's been a lot of talk recently in the community of like, okay, but where's that but for adults?
Hmm.
And so we wanted to take that concept but also make it, in our own way, add our own like love for culture and community, because it wasn't for us just like a money making thing. Like we weren't out here looking to make money for ourselves. We wanted a space for community to gather and specifically the literary community to celebrate books, to celebrate authors. And so we met in Almonte. We found like a school that was willing to allow us to rent their gymnasium for the day. And it was amazing. We had vendors, we had performers, we had an open mic. We invited vendors to come, like authors specifically, to sell their books and poets. And we didn't charge vendor fees. That was always something that was very
Hmm.
important to us. Even if we had to sponsor the whole thing ourselves, we wanted, again, to make it accessible because so often people can't afford those vendor fees. I've seen festivals that will charge vendors, $100, $200. And you have to think like, at what point are they breaking even? Like, what is the likelihood that they're going to break even on
Hmm.
that for, a 6, 7 hour event? So we wanted to make it as open and accessible as possible for everybody. And it was amazing. I think people really saw the vision and really celebrated the fact that this was like a space just for us, and that um, it was really a moment that everyone could just like, it was a $5 ticket. So again, like you think about like festivals, like AWP is like a really big conference for writers, and the prices are really exorbitant. And the only reason I was able to go this year actually in Los Angeles, because I volunteered. And when you volunteer, you get a free
Hmm.
ticket. And so we offer that as well, like for volunteers, like you get in free. And so I think for us, the goal was always to, again, make it as open and available for our community as possible. And the fact that it was in Almonte, I think people also noticed that and thank us for that, because oftentimes, the writing events are happening in Hollywood or like downtown Los Angeles, and it's like not many people can afford to live there, or can afford to even make it there on public transport. So having it be in a space that maybe not people don't think of as like a literary hub or like the heart of civilization, or even the heart of Southern California, I
Hmm.
think was something that people took notice of. And in fact, we even held an open mic a few months later in Pico Rivera, and people were coming up to us like, nothing ever happens in Pico Rivera. Like, this is somebody came who like lived 2 blocks down, was like, this was the closest writing event I've ever been able to go to. Usually I have to take like a couple buses, or I have to like shell out for an Uber. And so I think every choice we made for that festival was very intentional,
Hmm.
to make it a place where people could go relatively easily and find joy and being able to see people, see some of their favorite authors, or find new authors that they really like. Free books, we gave out free books,
Hmm.
and it was just such an amazing event, and we're hoping to host one again next summer too.
Oh, great. I look forward to that. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is this notion of you can play the game. People tell you, well, you'll just have to play the game. You'll have to
Mm,
do what they tell you, do the social media, or just take go to a different basketball, go do your own game, do your own game
yeah.
somewhere else. And there's a lot of value in that. And I think I'm echoing and agreeing with what you're saying about indie publishing and just indie events, that sometimes groups, people, we have to do our own game. We have to come up with our own way of doing it, because it is a waiting game. Traditional publishing, everything about it is on the publisher's schedule, not yours.
Mm-hmm.
What drew you to get a degree in library and information science?
Yeah, it's kind of a sad, funny story, but basically, I was 2 years out of my undergrad. I graduated from undergrad like peak of COVID. I
Mm.
was, graduating in like my pajamas. I was in my grandmother's, breakfast room, whatever. It was a fun time. But I definitely think like the 2 years following that, I was kind of in this weird moment, because at that point, right, the job market was pretty much obsolete. Like nothing, everything felt pointless, or at least it did to me. And so I was kind of honestly a little lost. Like I didn't really know what I was doing. And I think a lot of people my age felt that way, especially, graduating college. I think there's this perception of, or this expectation rather, of you graduate, you get a job, you start paying off your loans, you start becoming an adult, and like none of that was happening. I was living with my parents. All of my work was remote. I was a journalist for, well, I guess I still am, but I was getting into journalism at that point and working freelance, and it was all very like loosey-goosey, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I was like, maybe it's just time to get my MFA. And so, for those of you who don't know, an MFA is it's a Master's of Fine Arts, and you can get it in different genres. And I wanted it in either poetry or prose, or there was a school who was offering both, which I thought was amazing. And so I submitted my applications. I put together my writing packets. I sent it out to 8 schools and got rejected from every single one. And obviously, that was a real big hit to my ego. I've been rejected before, but never have I been rejected in that subsequent, like that number of times, like back to back.
Yeah. Wow.
So it wasn't a great feeling. I had a lot of, I was really torn up about it. Like it was probably one of the lowest points of my life, of like really believing like, oh my God, I'm not good enough.
Hmm.
I'm not a real writer, whatever, quote unquote, like I'm not worthy of anything I've ever accomplished. Like it was like my lowest point. And so a few months go by, and I'm still doing my journalism thing. I'm still doing, my writing and everything. And then it kind of came to me. I was like, I really want to like further my ambitions. And like I know I want to do something. Like if writing isn't my day job, and I really didn't want it to be because it could be very draining, and then I had no energy left for my creative work, that the stuff I was actually
Mm.
fueling me. And and so I started thinking a lot about things that I had enjoyed doing when I was a kid. And the one thing that kept coming up again and again was going to the library.
Hmm.
And, you know, when I was in kindergarten or first grade, like I remember like very vividly, we had a library that was like, it was like within maybe like a couple blocks walk, and they would take us and we would sit there for like an hour or so. We would do story time, and we would look for books that we wanted, and we would check them out. And it was like this very visceral physical that like never left me. And I remember even like thinking like, oh my God, when I was little, I used to want to be a librarian. Like that was something that I thought of. And then it was like, you know, and then it was like, it pushed to the back of my mind because then I found writing. And then, you know, as I'm thinking of all these things, like, you know, I'm just like pondering, like, how do I kind of move forward with my life and incorporate books and writing in some kind of way that maybe isn't journalism. And so I decided I was, you know, doing research, and I was like, oh, I could get a master's of library and information science. That's what the degree I need to be a librarian. Let's do it.
Uh-huh.
I applied to one school and one school only because I was like, I had been burned by 8 other schools. So I was like, if I get rejected by this one school, that's my sign. That's my sign that I need to let this go, that this
Wow.
wasn't worth it, that this was just like a thought experiment. And then maybe like 2 weeks later, I got the acceptance email, and they were like, we'd love to have you. Da, 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 da. And yeah, so it was kind of just like, I think it's one of those moments in my life where I was like, that was completely a fluke, right? Like there was no way that that actually happened. Like, what do you mean I only submitted to one school? That's crazy. Why would I do that? But for me in that moment, I was just like this is like the minimum effort I can give. And if that's rejected, then I know that it's something else. But luckily, that's not what happened. And I ended up getting, I got my degree. I graduated in June. It took me about 2 years, which was crazy. It was like a speed run. It was like fully like invested. And I got a job in a public library. I'm no longer working there, but I'm working at a different one. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. I never thought that I would be here, that I would be working in a library, like pretty much my childhood dream, and definitely not what I expected, but also so much more too.
What do libraries offer? People think, well, libraries, they lend books. That's all they do. But I guess, right? But what do libraries offer in addition to just lending books that people may not know about?
Yeah, so we actually talked a lot about this in library school, the how libraries have changed over time. Like that was like a whole course discussion. And I thought it was really interesting because I think you're right. I think even though libraries have evolved so much since probably the turn of the century, I think there is still this outdated idea of libraries. Like we're far ahead. We're like in 2050, and everybody else still thinks of us as like, you know, the glasses wearers who are going to shush you. And in fact, I've never shushed anyone. Like I've never shushed anyone like my year and some change of working in libraries. What I like the thing that like I do the most is telling people to stop running.
Mm,
Like that's the thing that I'm like walking feet, no running. You'd be surprised like how many kids, it's mostly the kids who are just like
yeah.
sprinting. And I'm like, this isn't a playground. Like, oh my God. Anyways, so that's the thing that's my version of shushing.
Right.
It's just telling people to slow down. Um, but I think it's been really great to be able to show people, like to showcase the amount of resources we have. So at the library that I'm specifically working at, we have sewing machines. You can check out
Hmm.
sewing
Wow.
machines for 6 weeks. We have a lot of craft classes and DIY classes. We book a librarian, so you can make an appointment with one of our librarians and learn about how to use Microsoft Word and Excel, or set up your computer, or look into like your genealogy. Like they can literally, you'll sit there and they'll show you how to do different things and walk you through it. We have a history room, so if you're interested in the history of your city, you can look through old archives and documents and photos that we have. You can, what else? Oh my God, there's so much. You can check out hotspots. So if you don't have Wi-Fi or like reliable internet where you live, you can check out a hotspot for, I think it's also 3 to 6 weeks, and use that, like connect that to your device and use free internet, which is really great. People really, really needed that during the Eaton and Altadena fires this past January. Like those were flying off our shelves because they, you know, they again, they didn't have much of anything less the internet. So that was really helpful. State park passes, you can check out park passes and use them at different state parks throughout California and get free parking, which is always really great. Oh my God, I feel like there's so much more I'm missing. Movies, DVDs, audiobooks, ebooks. Oh
Wow.
my God. Our library has guitars, like they have musical instruments, so you can check out guitars, ukuleles, a full keyboard set. Somebody walked in and had like the full keyboard set up, like the stand and the keyboard. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know we had that. So you can like do like, like electric guitars. I've seen, we have like a drum set, like one of those bongo drum sets. And it's only, I feel like it's only growing. Like that's such a small percentage of it. I know like the Whittier Library has 3D printers that you can use for free as part of like your library card, services, tutoring. Like I think there is just so much that people just don't know about. And we're more than happy to talk about it. Like I love bragging about how advanced libraries have become because again, like we're more than just books. Although books are very valuable, I think so many
Mm,
times I think people close themselves off to
mhm,
libraries because it's like, oh, well, I don't read. And it's like, well, you don't have to. You can come to the library for other things. I think also if we're thinking about the Ann Howes, we're also great resources for like AC and heat
right.
and drinking water and a place to go to the bathroom and like
Hmm.
things that I think a lot of people don't think about, but it's like those are resources too. The just the little things to get you through your day and to survive for like another day longer. And um, oh, we have seed libraries. Sorry, and I feel like I'm like going on and on.
It's a long list.
We have a seed. We have a seed library, so you can like take seeds and plant them
Hmm.
in your garden, and then you can give seeds back too. So a lot of libraries have programs like that, and it's so cool. But yeah, I think that's as much as I can think of. But it's like every library has something different, and I think it's so worth checking out what they have to offer.
It's really that community hub idea.
Mhm.
During the last few heat waves, our library became important just as a cooling
Yeah,
center where we could go
yeah.
get air conditioning.
Mhm.
Now, we're living in an era of book challenges, and
Yeah.
do you think that this is something that will pass, or it's something that we'll need to deal with and stand up to? This is the new reality. What's your read on it?
Yeah, I haven't had any people come up to the desk and challenge anything, but in library school, that was something we talked about a lot, and we would go through scenarios, like real life scenario, like case studies, and
Wow.
talking about like things that have actually happened to other libraries. So a lot of the times, it's mostly actually with school libraries. It's a lot of the times parents, trying to fight certain books that are in the library. I just recently read of a case. I don't remember which school. Actually, I want to say it was actually Rhode Island, which was surprising to me, but they recently took out all of their books by African American authors or books that featured African
Hmm.
American characters. All of them. They were gone.
Wow.
Like from
Hmm.
one day to the next. And to me, it's interesting because I feel like libraries oftentimes I think practice censorship themselves, and oftentimes they don't even know it. Like I've noticed a lot of the times, sometimes topics like LGBTQ characters or storylines are often, even if they're marketed towards children, they'll shelve them in adult area. And it's like that's censorship too in a way because you're
Hmm.
you're preventing children from coming across these books and maybe they're questioning their identity themselves and they need something that is answering a question they may already have. And basically what you're saying is no, you can't because they're closed
Hmm.
off in this area. And that's a quiet type of censorship that I don't think people often talk about. Um, and again, I mean, obviously, you have to think about community, like the community you're serving, the people you're serving, what they need and what they're looking for. But at some point, it's like I think all of us, have to kind of take a step back and think about how we are also complacent and how um, information is stored, protected. Distributed. Like I think there's all types of censorship, not just book banning that is unfortunately becoming more prevalent. Like libraries in more conservative areas, you'll find don't have a lot of books that are um, that meet DEI requirements or ideas. Um, and it's yeah, I think there are many levels to it that I think people are not always aware of. But with book banning and specifically to your question with book banning, um, unfortunately, given the political state right now, I don't think it's anything that's going to go away. And I think we all, again, have to take responsibility for how we're complacent in that or not. When
Mhm.
are we going to speak up? How are we going to speak up? How do we kind of fight these injustices? For me, I think that's something I'm trying to think more about in my own line of work. Like, how am I complacent in certain policies that we enact and the where books are placed on the shelf? I don't have a lot of agency in that way because my role as a clerk is not a librarian yet, so I don't have a lot of voice in that. But it is, I think we all have power and we all have responsibility to stand up and be like, why is it this way? Or could it
Mhm.
be different? But yeah, I can't say in my library that we've had anything recently with book banning in particular, but yeah, it's always something I'm thinking about and definitely, unfortunately, just one of those trends that I don't think is going away anytime soon.
Mm. Just so I'm clear, who
Mhm.
gets to decide
Hmm.
what books get shelved and where? Who makes the
It's
initial decision?
yeah. To be honest, I don't know for sure, but I definitely think the librarian in that certain section has a lot of weight in that.
Hmm.
I do like some of my coworkers are the ones who like order books, and I've always wanted to ask them like, how do you decide which books you're ordering this time? Like, how do you decide, like what the community needs and what they're looking for, and how are you meeting your diversity quota? Is that something that is factored in how you purchase books? I've been meaning to ask them that because I think it is a very interesting question. And to your point, yeah, I think there are a lot of different people and a lot of different voices that make these decisions. But to make it a little bit more personal, so my children's book that recently published in September is about queer Latina heroes. So people who throughout history have made some kind of impact on our community. And it's marketed for children, 3 to 8 years old. And I recently was like in a conversation with a librarian who had shelved it as an adult book. And so I called them asking why. And they couldn't give me a straight answer, which I thought was very interesting because I'm like, I'm
Mm.
trying to be fair here. I know our job is hard. Personally, I can attest to the fact that our job is hard. But it was when I kept asking her, like, I don't understand. Like, I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Like, I'm trying to inform her, like, the Library of Congress even has it categorized as a
Mm.
juvenile publication.
Hmm.
So I'm just curious, like I want to know more about why it's an adult, why it's section, categorized as an adult book. And she couldn't really give me a straight answer. She was just like, well, it's checked out right now, so we have to review it, but we can't review it until it's checked back in. And it was like this weird, like non-answer, but it was also kind of an answer too. And so yeah, I understand these decisions are really difficult because I think what she probably wanted to prevent was a parent coming to her
Right.
desk and handing her my book and being like, why is this here? So I definitely have a lot of empathy and sympathy for these people who make these really hard decisions. But again, it's like at some point we have to question our own complacency and our responsibility, to the community we serve and how sometimes our decisions do them a disservice. So I that situation has not been resolved. I haven't called them back since because I
Mm.
just don't really want to know the answer. But it's definitely something I personally have had to deal with of libraries again practicing their own levels of censorship. Um, that is kind of invisible and kind of goes unnoticed. Which it's like I think it was frustrating for me too because I was like LA Public Library categorizes as juvenile. Alhambra, like I was listing all these different libraries, maybe in more progressive areas to be sure, but I was like, other libraries do it, so why aren't you?
Hmm.
And that's a really hard question for anyone to answer. And I definitely wanted to give her that grace, but it's hard. It's definitely something that I think, having been personally impacted by it myself, it's something that really has no perfect answer.
Libraries, I imagine, need to respond to the community standard, whatever that is. They're trying to read that. But there's this tension here between, is the library ahead of the curve or behind the curve? Is
Hmm.
the library leading or
Yeah.
following? And I think the best libraries are leading
Mhm.
because, in the sense that it's not a
Mhm.
quota for diversity. They just have everything. That's the point. They're responding to the need for knowledge. And if a, if a queer kid's going to come in and
Mhm.
wants to find a book on their own, they should be able to do that. Just like you should be able to find a history of the founding fathers or whatever you're looking for your book report, or someone like me who's
Mhm.
uses libraries just to because they like reading. I should be able to find the books that I want to
Mhm.
read, you know, because they're good books. But I know that that's kind of a simplistic answer to a complicated question.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about going back to writing, a little bit of circular structure here.
Mhm.
What do you really love about writing, and what do you not so much love about writing?
Oh, actually, oh, it's a good question. I think what I love most about writing is just the experimentation of it, the freedom of it. In a lot of ways, I often have described it as like my therapy. And as someone who has done actual therapy, I think that holds up. I think for me, it allows me to mull through things that I'm thinking about in my mind. Especially when I have obsessions, like there are certain topics that I like will not leave my brain. And it's like the other like 2 nights ago, I woke up at 2 a.m. and like wrote a bunch of stuff in my notes app because I couldn't stop thinking about it. And that's how my writing
Mm.
works is like I'm obsessing over something like constantly until I can let it loose on the page and then I can look at it and be like, okay, how, what do I do with this? How do I play with it? How do I have fun with this? And for me, writing is all about play. Obviously there comes the money part and the publishing part and the revisions, but the most fun part is just the experimenting. Like figuring out where the sentence is going to go, playing with, the linguistics of like who the speaker is of this certain piece. If it's like figuring out whether this is a poem or is it a novel or is it a short story. I love being multi-genre because there is that inherent, like, I don't know where this is going to go. And I used to be really overwhelmed by it. There was a point in my life where I was like,
Mm.
oh, I hated that about myself, actually. Like, I was like, I'm so frustrating. Why can't I just figure it out? Why can't I just stick to one genre like everybody else? And as I've gotten older and I've published more work, I'm like, actually, this is my greatest superpower. Like I respect
Mm.
people who can go all in and who are just poets or just short story writers. Like I love that. But for me, it's like it would be so limiting. I love the fact that I can take from my notes app is going to turn into a poem, or I think it's going to be like a short story idea, but really it's like, oh my God, this is like a big thing. This is a novel sized idea, or it's something else entirely. Like I love blending genres too. Like I think for me, less there's like less differences than between genres than I think we realize. There's a lot, of poetry that I find in novels. Like I love novels written by poets because they use so
Mm.
much of those poetic elements in their work, and it drives the story forward and gives their writing a very unique feel than, a novel written by a novelist. Like it's very different, both valuable 100%, but
Yeah,
definitely very
sure.
different. And yeah, I love that part of the writing is the actual just I feel like writers have this like word like a word vomit. Like we just vomit all over the page and it's like, let's just see where this goes. And I love that first foray into any project. The part that I don't like, oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think it's the marketing. I hate marketing. I'm trying to get better at it, but the idea of being like, please read my book is so humiliating. It's so embarrassing. But I'm trying to get over it because I have a lot of faith in my work and I'm proud of the things that I
Mm.
make and I want people to read them. And I can't just expect me to publish a book and it's like waiting around for people to notice. It's like, no, like you have to shove it a little bit in their face and let them know and like email and, and do the social media posts even if you don't want to. And for me, I think, yeah, it's the hardest part. It's honestly sometimes more vulnerable than the actual writing. Like I can write a
Yeah.
poem about, my innermost fears and secrets so easily. But then the thought of like posting about my book on Instagram is like, oh my God, like I would rather do anything else. Like, please God. So that's probably the part I don't like the most is commodifying my work and like asking people, do you want this? But yeah, I'm trying to get better at it. I'm trying to be more proud of myself when I publish a book. Like that's such a big thing. And
That's right.
to me, sometimes it's just like, oh, it's a regular Tuesday. Oh, well, I published a book. So what? But it's like, no, like this is a big deal. You need to tell people. So I'm trying to get better at that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I definitely can empathize with all of that. I, I like there's this old expression, wine for first drafts, coffee for editing. And not everybody drinks coffee or wine, but the idea of the freedom of the first draft
hmm
is so much fun. But editing, just typos and spelling errors and being consistent, everything, it's so
hmm
opposite. That's what's so absolutely strange about it, because it's so free in the beginning and so opposite in the when you're trying to like, well, did I capitalize that before? Like, well, who cares? Well, someone's going to care.
hmm
And you know my wife Tabby, but we'll be reading and we'll find typos and
Yeah.
problems in like big time
hmm
publishers. It's amazing how prevalent that is, but and I can vibe on the marketing too, but I try to think of it as, well, I want to talk about my work. I
Yeah.
like talking about my work, so let's talk about my work. You know, it can be hard, but what does your writing space look like? Where do you write and what does it look like?
Yeah, so that's still a work in progress. I recently moved, so everything is still in boxes. I
Hmm.
barely, oh my God, I don't know why my camera just moved, but I still, this is still a work in progress, but not at all done. But I typically write, I don't know, I typically write anywhere. I feel like this is so dangerous and I do not condone this, but sometimes I'll be driving and I'll come up with an idea and while I'm at a stoplight, I'll just like quickly like put it in my notes app and I'm like, okay, back to driving. Like it's
Yeah.
definitely do not condone it, but for me, that's kind of how my brain works. Like I can just be living my life, driving to work, and then like a line will come to me. And I'll just like, oh, I love that. And I'll just quickly write it. My friend actually, I have a friend who told me once that what she does is she bought these like little notebooks, like they're like this size and they come with a pen and she keeps that in her car. So it's like a slightly
Yeah.
safer version of
Yeah, right.
of my technique. I've tried it. I don't write fast enough. Like I feel like I type faster than I write. So sometimes I'm like, I'll switch it. But that's like her method, which I think is so cool. Because then you have like this physical object of every thought you've ever had while like driving, which I think is really cool. But yeah, I'll mostly in my notes app and then like but obviously I can't write like very much in there. So what I'll do is like maybe sometimes I'll transfer it to like my computer or I'll open a like a journal and just kind of like start free writing like okay like let's look at this idea more. Let's what can I fit this into? And actually I think it's funny when you said about revision because I feel like revision is actually my second favorite part, mostly because I think that's when it really comes to life and it actually starts getting good. Because I think,
Hmm.
the first draft is like me just kind of muddling around, like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just kind of, it's like feeling my way through a dark tunnel without any light. I'm just kind of trying to reach the entrance, just kind of getting my way there. Where revision is really where I feel like I'm standing on solid ground and I can understand what my work is saying and what I'm doing and it really starts to feel real and it's like it's actually getting kind of good. Like I'm actually kind of into this. And I like where I am. So I think that for me, like the revision process is when things start to become solid, and real. And so yeah, I think I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, basically, I think my writing process takes a lot of different forms, depends on where I am, how I'm feeling, where I am physically in my space. I don't think there's any one space. Like I'm not, I wish I was Stephen King. I remember reading his book on writing once, and I don't know if you've read that too, his book on writing.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. I think in general, it gives a lot of good advice, but one part that made me laugh was when he described his writing process as like, he's literally in a room. Like he is the stereotypical writer of like he's at a
Yes.
desk at his typewriter in a room with the door closed. And then I remember like there was this one line where he was like, "Yeah, my wife brings me food and like does raises the kids." And I'm like, "You know what, Stephen? I wish we all could live like that." That's not how most
Right.
people live. Like my door is always open, my dog comes in and out. I'm making dinner sometimes, we switch off on doing chores. Like I believe in equality, but maybe Stephen has other ideas, whatever. But a lot of people, it's totally valid if that's your process. But for me, it's like my writing process is everywhere all the time. Like
Hmm.
it's washing the dishes, it's driving to work, it's sleeping with my dog in the sunshine. Like there is beauty in everything. and everything can become like a place to write. And that's what I've always believed, just how I feel in that moment. I feel very fluid, in a lot of my writing practices.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I've done, I think around 30 of these episodes, and I asked that question of many writers, and I was actually amazed that the common answer is just that. Only a few people said, well, I have this dedicated room where, whatever, my grandmother made the desk, or, it's like
Mhm.
most people are writing on their phones or when, their mind is always creating. So, the two
Mhm.
things that have been the most helpful for me is a little app called Starlog, which works on a phone, has really good transcription. It's you press one button and you start blabbing into it, and then it transcribes it instantly. And I use that,
Wow.
whenever I move, whenever my body starts moving, I have an idea. So
Mhm.
I do that. And the other thing is
Wow.
really teaching myself to write in 20 or 25-minute segments. I use the old Pomodoro method, and
Yes,
that
me
is
too.
really good for interruptions because, I just have to make it for 25 minutes and then, the cat's going to meow or something's going to happen. Yeah, but it's a very different process than that classical, people bring me food kind of situation, which is, I'm the cook around here. So I usually, people are hungry. I have to do something about it. It's the other way around. I want to ask one wide angle question is, what are your thoughts about the state of writing and publishing today?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely a wide angle question. I don't even know where to begin with that. But I will say that I think we're in a very interesting moment. I think publishing, even though I did talk about the gatekeeping, I think it's never been more accessible than it is now. Like you can literally just print out your work on a library printer or your printer at home, staple it, and tell people, "Hey, I made this thing. Do you want to buy it?" Like I think there's never been a greater moment than right now, to start publishing your work and putting yourself out there, or just writing in general. Like not everybody has to be published in order to be a writer. You can be a writer because you are writing and because you
Mhm.
like writing and you're thinking about it and and practicing it and making it part of your daily process. And so we're in a really interesting moment. I'm interested to see how oh gosh, how the state of the world is going to impact writing right now. One of my close friends, she does publish a poetry chapbook called When the World Ends This Time, and it's
Mm.
very apocalyptic. It's like a poetry collection about apocalypse and the endings of things and feeling like the whole world is on fire. And actually one of my other friends just I think last year he published a book called I'm Late to Work and the World is Burning. And I thought
Mm.
that was like the funniest thing I've ever heard because it's like it really is like that. Like you will be
Right.
driving to work and you're just thinking about all the ways that the world is horrible and it keeps you up at night. And that's the thing
Mm.
is like I feel like we're simultaneously the best we've ever been and also like the worst. Like nothing has ever been worse than in this moment right now. But I think the conditions we're in, the recession, the constant genocides around the world, the constant violence, the constant divisions, like this moment is calling us to stand up for something and to say something of value. And so, as bleak as it is, I think we're still in a moment where, um, while we still have freedom to say certain things, we should be saying them. I guess is
Mm.
what I'm trying to say. We need to be standing up for something. And I think oftentimes I will often sit and think about the fact that, like, what are my ancestors going to say about me like decades from now?
Mhm.
How are they going to talk about me and what I was doing in this moment of time? And that can I curse on here?
Yeah.
I don't know, okay. That scares the shit out of me. But it also is lighting the fire under me and being like, I have to do something. I have to use the skills that I have, the passion I have, dare I say the talent I have to stand up and make the world a little less shitty than it is right now. But yeah, I think for me that's what the landscape is like, is that
Mm.
we're responding to a lot of just the general terribleness of the world, and especially thinking about AI too, and how generative AI is allowing people to steal our work, to, you know, become writers in a way that's like writing has never been done before. Like you can literally from what I hear, like generate an entire novel in like 2 seconds. It's like, okay, but that doesn't make you a writer. Like a lot of good things will make you a writer, but that's not one of them.
Mm.
And I feel like we need to be able to like hold on to our humanity, write our own damn work, even if it's terrible. Like at least a human made it. Like to me, something like that a human made that is terrible is worth, an innumerable amount than something AI made. Like that's just point blank and no question. And so I want us to keep creating in this moment of darkness. Like if nothing else, like if everything is taken away from us, that's like the one thing worth holding on to for me is my words, my work, my books, my stories, all of that. And I hope people feel that way too.
Well, I do, and you should keep doing what you're doing. I hope you do. The world really needs your voice.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated it and really loved it and enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to the Future Lab. If you like this episode, please head over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube and give us a like and a positive comment. It sounds like a small thing, but it makes a big difference in helping more people discover the show. You can find out more about my books at my author's website, leeschneiderbooks.com. We'll see you next time. I'm Lee Schneider.